Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I worked as a hairstylist for almost 6 years. It started when I was fresh out of beauty school working at someone else's salon for barely minimum wage. I saved every penny, worked double shifts on weekends, and even did hair for friends and family on my days off to build up my client base. 3 years ago, I finally had enough to open my own salon. It's small, but it's mine, and I'm proud of what I built. My boyfriend and I had been together for 2 years. We're both private people, so we decided early on to keep our relationship between us until we were serious about marriage. We didn't want to deal with family pressure or opinions before we were ready. Last month, we finally felt confident enough to tell his family we were getting engaged. The meeting with his parents went well at first. They seemed happy for us and asked the usual questions about wedding plans and timelines. Then his mother turned to me with this bright smile and asked what I did for work. When I told her I was a hairstylist who owned my own salon about an hour from their house, her eyes lit up. She got excited and said that now they wouldn't have to pay to get their hair done anymore. She wanted to start with her own hair first, so she could see how good I was before I officially became her daughter-in-law. I felt my stomach drop. I just smiled and nodded because I didn't want to cause a scene during our announcement. My boyfriend looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything either. 3 days later, my phone rang. It was her. After some small talk, she asked me where my salon was located again. I gave her the address, thinking maybe she was actually planning to book an appointment properly. She complained that it was too far and said she couldn't come all the way there. Instead, she demanded that I come to her house that day to braid her hair. I asked what style she was thinking and explained that for home service, it would be an additional $50 on top of the regular price since I had to travel and bring all my equipment. There was silence for a moment. Then she told me she wasn't going to pay for it because I would soon be her daughter-in-law. This woman expected me to drive an hour to her house, bring all my supplies, spend hours doing her hair, and do it all for free just because I was marrying her son. I told her I didn't offer free home service, especially not for an hour-long trip. I explained that this was my business and how I made my living. She insisted that we were going to be family, but I reminded her that didn't change the fact that this was my job and I had bills to pay and a business to run. I hung up the phone before she could say anything else. My hands were shaking. I called my boyfriend immediately and told him what happened. He was quiet for a long time before saying he would talk to her. I explained that this wasn't just about the money but about respect, and that she had basically told me my work had no value. 2 hours later, she called back. This time, she wasn't as sweet. She said she had spoken to her son and that he told her I was upset about paying for hair services. I tried to explain that wasn't what this was about. She said she was trying to give me a chance to prove myself and that free services for family was normal. She mentioned that her last hairstylist always gave her discounts. I pointed out that her last hairstylist wasn't her daughter-in-law, and even if they were, that would be their choice to make. She offered to pay half price, but I told her my prices weren't negotiable. I said if she wanted to book an appointment at my salon, she was welcome to, but otherwise I suggested she find someone else. She hung up on me this time. The next day, my boyfriend came over looking stressed. He told me she was telling everyone in the family that I was money hungry and didn't care about family. When I asked what he told them, he said he told them the truth, that I ran a business and deserved to be paid for my work. His dad agreed with him, but his sister thought I should have just done it to keep the peace. I was getting more frustrated by the hour. Then my phone rang again from an unknown number. It was my boyfriend's sister. She said she heard about the situation with her mom and asked if I couldn't just do her hair once for free because it would mean so much to the family. I asked her if she would do her job for free just because someone was joining her family. She said that was different. When I asked how it was different, she said because hair was just hair. That comment made me see red. Just hair. Like the years of training, the investment in my business, the hours I spent on my feet every day meant nothing. I told her if it was just hair, then their mother could do it herself. I hung up and turned off my phone. I was done. The final straw came a week later. My boyfriend's mother showed up at my salon unannounced. She walked in and said she was there for her appointment. I told her she didn't have an appointment. She said she was there now and had brought her sister and neighbor, and they all needed their hair done. My receptionist looked at me with wide eyes. I had clients waiting and a full schedule. I explained that I was completely booked and she would need to call and make an appointment. She said this was ridiculous and that since she was going to be my mother-in-law, the least I could do was squeeze them in. I replied that the least she could do was respect my business and my time. She got louder and called me a greedy little girl who didn't understand family values. She said her son deserved better than someone who put money before family. That's when I'd had enough. I walked over to her and told her she needed to leave my salon right now because she was disrupting my business and my clients. She refused to leave until I did their hair. I picked up the phone and told her I was calling the police for trespassing. I started dialing and she turned red and walked out with her sister and neighbor in tow. That evening my boyfriend came over. I thought he was going to be angry with me for threatening to call the cops on his mother. Instead, he apologized and said he had no idea she would do something like that. I told him his mother had called me a greedy little girl in front of my clients and staff. He said he knew and that his dad had called him. His father was mortified when he heard what happened. His dad told her she needed to apologize to me and that if she ever disrespected me or my business again, she wouldn't be welcome at our wedding. I was shocked. I hadn't expected his father to take my side so strongly. The next day, she called me one more time. She said she owed me an apology. I agreed that she did. She apologized for how she acted at my salon and admitted it was inappropriate. I waited for more. After a long pause, she also apologized for expecting free services and said she realized now that was wrong. I thanked her. Then she asked if I would be willing to do her hair for the engagement party and said she would pay full price for salon service. I told her I'd be happy to and that she should call during business hours to schedule an appointment. It all started innocently enough. My friend had been talking about starting her own business for years. She'd always been crafty, making little earrings and bracelets for herself and gifting them to friends. When she finally decided to take the plunge and sell online, I was genuinely excited for her. She told me excitedly that she was finally doing it and starting her jewelry business. I told her how amazing that was and how proud I was of her for going for it. Then she asked if I could help her out sometimes with small stuff like packaging orders or posting on social media. She said it would be nothing crazy, just when I had time. I immediately agreed and told her I'd love to help support her dream. And I meant it. I really did want to help her succeed. The first few weeks were exactly what she'd promised, super casual. Maybe I'd spend an hour on a Sunday helping her photograph some pieces, or I'd quickly share one of her posts on my Instagram story. It felt good to be part of something she was passionate about. But then things started changing. The small favors became daily requests. My phone would buzz with messages every morning asking me to write captions for posts, package orders after work, or fix something on her website. At first, I didn't mind. I figured she was just getting overwhelmed with orders, which was a good problem to have, right? But the requests kept getting bigger and more demanding. She'd send me detailed to-do lists, like I was actually working for her. She started sending me weekly lists of tasks that included updating website banners, writing product descriptions for new collections, responding to customer emails, and designing flyers for craft fairs. When I mentioned that it was quite a bit of stuff and maybe we should talk about it, she just brushed me off and said she knew I could handle it because I was so good at that kind of work. The breaking point should have been when she started introducing me to people differently. We were at a friend's birthday party when someone asked about her business. She told them it was going great and that she had a social media assistant now who helped her with everything. I felt my face get hot. Social media assistant? I wasn't getting paid a dime and suddenly I had a job title. The stranger said it was smart to hire help when growing a business and my friend agreed, saying I'd been amazing. I pulled her aside later that night and told her I wasn't comfortable being called her assistant when I was just helping as a friend. She told me not to be so sensitive and said she was just trying to make the business sound more professional. That should have been my wake-up call, but I let it slide. I kept telling myself she was just stressed about the business and didn't mean anything by it. The final straw came last week. She called me on a Friday afternoon while I was in the middle of a big project at work and told me I needed to take the next day off. When I asked why, she explained that the craft fair was on Sunday and they had so much to do. She needed me there all day Saturday to help set up displays, organize inventory, make price tags, and handle everything else. I told her I couldn't take the day off with no notice and that I already had plans. She insisted I had to cancel them and said I owed her this because I was part of the team. She claimed the business wouldn't be where it was without my help. Something about the way she said I owed her made my blood boil. I've been giving her free labor for months, sacrificing my evenings and weekends, and now she was acting like I was in debt to her. I told her I needed to think about it, and she responded by telling me there was nothing to think about and to just be there at 8 a.m. the next morning. That night, I really reflected on what had been happening. I'd gone from being a supportive friend to being an unpaid employee who was expected to prioritize someone else's business over my own life and career. The friend I'd wanted to help had turned into someone who felt entitled to my time and skills without any compensation or even basic respect for my boundaries. The next morning, I called her and explained that I'd been thinking about everything and needed to set some boundaries. I told her I loved supporting her, but I wasn't her employee. I said my time was valuable and I couldn't keep helping at this level without some kind of compensation. The silence on the other end was deafening. She asked if I was serious, and I said that I was. I explained that if she wanted casual help from a friend, I was happy to do that, but if she needed someone to work regular hours and handle business responsibilities, she needed to hire someone. She called me selfish and said she couldn't believe I was doing this to her. She told me she thought I cared about her dreams. I told her I did care but explained that caring didn't mean I had to work for free. She accused me of abandoning her and said some friend I was. Then she claimed she never asked me to help in the first place. The gaslighting was incredible. She absolutely had asked me to help, multiple times, in increasingly demanding ways. I reminded her that she'd literally called me her social media assistant to strangers and sent me daily task lists. I pointed out that this wasn't casual friend help anymore. She told me fine, don't help her then, but not to expect her to forget how I'd stabbed her in the back when she needed me most. Then she hung up on me. Within hours, I started getting texts from mutual friends. She'd been calling everyone we knew, telling them I'd abandoned her business and wasn't being a supportive friend. According to her version, I promised to help her succeed and then backed out at the worst possible time. One friend called me directly and asked if it was true that I wasn't helping with the jewelry business anymore. I explained that it was complicated because she was expecting me to work like an employee without pay, and I had to set boundaries. My friend said that was very different from what she'd been told, since it sounded like I'd just randomly decided to stop helping. I clarified that it definitely wasn't random, and that I've been spending 15 to 20 hours a week on her business for free. My friend was shocked and said she'd been told I was just doing small favors here and there. That conversation opened my eyes to how much she'd been manipulating the narrative. She'd been downplaying how much work she was demanding from me while simultaneously painting me as the villain for stepping back. I decided to stop defending myself to every friend who asked. Instead, I simply said I'd set some boundaries around unpaid work and left it at that. The people who knew me well understood, and the ones who didn't weren't worth losing sleep over. 2 weeks later, I ran into another friend who filled me in on what had happened at the craft fair. My former friend had shown up completely unprepared. Without me there to handle all the setup and organization she'd come to rely on, she'd struggled to get her booth ready in time. She'd spent most of the day frantically trying to find price tags and organize her displays while potential customers walked past her chaotic table. This friend told me that she'd kept complaining about how her assistant had quit on her, which made things pretty awkward. When I asked about the assistant comment, my friend said that's what she'd been calling me. People had been asking why she didn't just hire someone else if she needed help that badly. The irony was perfect. By continuing to call me her assistant even after I'd stopped helping, she backed herself into a corner. People naturally assumed that if she needed an assistant, she should hire one. Her own lies had revealed the truth about what she'd been expecting from me. A month later, I heard she'd actually hired someone to help with her business and was paying them. Finding someone willing to work for free wasn't as easy as she'd thought. I never got an apology, but I did get something better. I got my weekends back and my sanity back. 32, married to my husband for 6 years now, and we finally bought our first house last year. It's nothing fancy, just a modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. We worked our butts off to save for the down payment, skipping vacations and eating ramen for months to make it happen. My cousin has always been difficult. She's 28 but acts like she's still in high school. Never held down a job for more than a few months, always has some drama going on, and somehow it's always everyone else's fault. Our families have this weird dynamic where everyone just enables her behavior, because that's just how she is. About 2 months ago, she got evicted from her apartment. Again. Third time in 2 years. She called me up, crying and begging, asking if she could crash at our place for just a few weeks until she got back on her feet. I told her I was sorry, but we couldn't have anyone staying with us right now. I explained that we were still settling in and my husband worked from home. She insisted that we were family and pointed out that we had an extra bedroom just sitting there empty. I had to explain that it was actually my husband's office and he needed quiet for his work calls. She suggested he could work somewhere else for a few weeks and kept saying she had nowhere else to go. I felt bad, but I knew from past experience that a few weeks with her meant months, if not longer. Plus, my husband had already expressed concerns about her staying with us after the last family gathering where she got drunk and made a scene. I apologized again but told her the answer was no. I suggested maybe she could stay with her mom or her sister. She got angry and called me selfish, saying that when push comes to shove, family should have each other's backs. Then she hung up on me. Fast forward to last week. My husband and I went out for our anniversary dinner. Nothing too expensive, just a nice evening at a local restaurant we'd been wanting to try. We got home around 10 p.m. and I immediately knew something was wrong. The front door was slightly ajar, and I could see light coming from upstairs. My husband grabbed the baseball bat we keep by the door, and we crept inside. We could hear someone moving around upstairs and music playing. When we got to the top of the stairs, I saw something shocking. My cousin was in our guest room, which doubles as my husband's office. She had pushed all his work equipment to one corner and set up what looked like a makeshift bedroom. Her clothes were everywhere. She had food containers scattered around, and she was just lounging on the air mattress she'd brought, scrolling through her phone like she owned the place. I demanded to know what she was doing there and how she got in. She casually said she figured we'd changed our minds and that she found the spare key under the flower pot. That spare key was for emergencies, and somehow she knew about it from when she'd visited months ago. My husband told her she needed to leave immediately. She told him to relax and said she wasn't hurting anything. She claimed she just needed a place to crash for a bit and reminded us that family helps family. I pointed out that she had broken into our house and that we had already told her no. She argued that she didn't break in because she used the key and complained that we weren't even using the room properly. My husband was furious. His computer setup, his work files, everything was shoved into a corner like garbage. He told her to get her stuff and get out, or we would call the police. She said we wouldn't call the cops on family and that doing so would be messed up. I pulled out my phone and told her to watch us as I started dialing. That's when she completely lost it. She jumped up and started screaming that we couldn't do this to her because she was family and had nowhere else to go. Then she grabbed a picture frame from the dresser and threw it at the wall. It shattered everywhere. My husband said that was it and went to our bedroom. He came back with something I didn't expect to see. He legally owns a handgun, has all the permits, and knows how to use it safely. He didn't point it at her, just held it at his side, but the message was clear. He told her she needed to stop destroying our house and leave immediately. Instead of calming down, she went completely ballistic. She started grabbing things and throwing them, screaming about how we were horrible people and how family should stick together. She knocked over his computer monitor, threw books everywhere, and even kicked a hole in the wall. The whole time she was yelling that we were both terrible and she couldn't believe we were choosing some stupid stuff over helping family. I announced that I was calling 911 right then. She told me to go ahead and said I should tell them how we were kicking out our own cousin who had nowhere to go. The whole time she was screaming these things, she was still throwing items and making an even bigger mess. She grabbed my husband's work laptop and I thought she was going to smash it. But thankfully, the police sirens were already audible outside. When the officers came in and saw the destruction, plus my husband explaining the situation calmly while she continued her tantrum, it was pretty clear what had happened. She tried to play the victim, saying we'd invited her and then changed our minds, but the evidence spoke for itself. One of the officers asked her if she had permission to be in the house. She replied that we were her family and she shouldn't need permission. The officer told her that's not how the law works. They arrested her for breaking and entering and destruction of property. When they were putting her in the car, she was still screaming about how we were terrible family members and how she was going to sue us for emotional damage. The aftermath was almost as bad as the incident itself. Half our family took her side, saying we should have just let her stay and that calling the police was extreme. My aunt actually had the nerve to ask us to drop the charges because it would ruin her future. But here's what really got me. After she was released on bail, we found out she'd been staying with her ex-boyfriend the whole time. She had somewhere to go all along. She just wanted our house because it was nicer and newer than where she was staying. We pressed full charges for the break-in and property damage. She ended up having to pay for all the repairs and replacements, plus court fees. The judge wasn't sympathetic to her argument about us being family, especially when it came out that she'd done similar things to other relatives in the past. Her ex-boyfriend kicked her out after he found out what she'd done, and now she's actually homeless and couch surfing with whoever will take her in for a night or two. Turns out when you have a criminal record for breaking into family members' houses, people are less willing to help you out. My neighbor across the street has always been friendly enough. We wave when we see each other, exchange pleasantries about the weather. About 6 months ago, their 20-something son moved back home with his girlfriend. They converted the apartment above their garage into a living space for the young couple. The son seemed okay, kept to himself mostly. The girlfriend, however, was a different story entirely. The first time I met her was when I was out fertilizing my lawn on a Saturday morning. I was spreading my usual weed and feed mixture when this woman I'd never seen before walked across the street and onto my property like she owned the place. She demanded to know what I was putting on my grass. I explained it was just some weed and feed to keep it healthy. She immediately told me to stop doing it, claiming the stuff was pure poison and would give her newborn baby cancer. I stood there holding my spreader, completely taken aback. This stranger was standing in my yard telling me what I could and couldn't do on my own property. I asked who she was exactly. She told me she lived right there and was my neighbor now, and she was telling me that what I was doing was dangerous and irresponsible. I tried to explain that I'd been using the same fertilizer for years, and it was perfectly safe when used following directions. She insisted that nothing with chemicals was safe and I was poisoning the entire neighborhood. She stomped back across the street, leaving me standing there wondering what just happened. I figured it was a one-time thing. Maybe she was just having a bad day with a new baby and all. The next week I was out back grilling some burgers for dinner. I love cooking outdoors, there's something relaxing about it after a long day of work. I was just flipping the patties when she appeared at my back fence. She asked if I was seriously grilling meat right now. I said yes, I was making dinner, and asked if there was a problem. She told me the smell was drifting over to their place, and since she was a vegetarian, it was making her physically ill. All she could think about were the poor murdered animals. I pointed out it was my backyard and I was allowed to cook dinner. She called it inconsiderate, saying the smoke and smell were invading their space and she was having nightmares about the slaughter. She went on this long rant about the meat industry while I just stood there with my spatula. I tried to be polite, but she wouldn't stop. Finally, I just told her I was going to finish making my dinner and went back to grilling. The complaints kept coming. A few days later, she noticed my two diesel trucks parked in my driveway. She told me those gas-guzzling monsters needed to go. I corrected her that they were diesel actually, and they were my vehicles. She said it was the same difference, and I was destroying the environment. I needed to get electric cars immediately. I pointed out that wasn't really her decision to make. She insisted it affected all of us, and my carbon footprint was disgusting. The irony hit me when she started complaining about my solar panels. I'd installed them on my storage building out back to reduce my electricity usage, trying to be more environmentally conscious. But apparently, even that was wrong. She called the solar panels an eyesore and said they weren't even responsibly produced. She claimed the manufacturing process destroyed the earth worse than just using regular electricity. At this point, I realized there was no pleasing this woman. Everything I did was somehow wrong in her eyes. She had appointed herself the neighborhood environmental police, and I was her primary target. The final straw came last weekend. I'd had enough of her constant criticism and decided to do something that would really get under her skin. I spent Saturday digging a huge pit in my backyard. Then I went to the butcher and bought a whole pig. I wrapped it in banana leaves, seasoned it with my favorite rub, and set it up for a traditional underground pig roast. The process takes about 24 hours of slow smoking. The aroma would be wafting across the neighborhood for a full day and night. I even made a point of inviting the whole block over for a pig roast dinner, including her family. I knocked on their door personally. I told them I was having a big pig roast the next day, smoking a whole pig underground. I invited them all to join us for dinner and mentioned I'd have tons of leftovers that would just go to waste if people didn't help eat it. Her boyfriend looked interested, but she appeared behind him with that familiar scowl. She said they didn't eat murder. I said no problem, I just thought I'd invite the neighbors. I mentioned it was going to smell pretty amazing all day the next day. She asked what I meant by all day. I explained it takes about 24 hours to smoke properly, that I'd started that morning and it should be ready by the following evening. I could see the rage building in her face when the implication hit her. The next day was beautiful. The pig was smoking perfectly, filling the air with this incredible barbecue aroma. I was out back checking on it when I heard screaming from across the street. She came charging across the street yelling that this was insane and I was doing it on purpose. She screamed that I was torturing them and the smell was everywhere. She couldn't escape it. I said I was just cooking dinner, same as always. She insisted this wasn't normal cooking and I was doing it to spite her. I reminded her that I'd invited her to join us and the offer still stood. She called me a psychopath, claiming I was poisoning the air and murdering innocent animals just to torture her. She was completely unhinged, screaming and gesturing wildly. Neighbors started coming out of their houses to see what the commotion was about. She yelled that I'd been harassing them for months, that I used chemicals, burned dead animals, and drove pollution machines. I pointed out that she was the one who kept coming onto my property to complain about everything I did. She shrieked that she was protecting her family and I was a menace. The whole time my security cameras were recording everything. I have a complete system that covers my entire property, something I installed after a break-in attempt a few years ago. After she finally stomped back home still screaming about my assault on her senses, I went inside and pulled up the footage. 6 solid minutes of her having an absolute meltdown in my yard, ranting about everything from my lawn care to my dinner choices. I edited together the best parts and uploaded the whole thing to our neighborhood Facebook page with a simple caption about this being what I'd been dealing with for 6 months. My neighbor's girlfriend had opinions about everything I did on my own property. The response was immediate. Neighbors I'd never even talked to started commenting about their own encounters with her. Apparently, she'd been making rounds, critiquing everyone's lifestyle choices. One neighbor said she'd lectured them about their flower garden attracting too many bees. Another said she'd complained about their dog barking during the day while they were at work. The video got shared dozens of times. People were commenting about how patient I've been, how unreasonable she was being, and how nobody should have to deal with that kind of harassment from a neighbor. Within a few hours, her boyfriend was at my door. He asked if I could take the video down. I asked why I would do that. He explained she was getting a lot of hate online and people were messaging her nasty stuff. I said that was unfortunate, but maybe she should consider not screaming at neighbors in their own yards. He acknowledged that he knew she came on strong sometimes, but insisted she meant well. I told him coming on strong was one thing, but what she did the day before was completely unhinged. He said she'd been under a lot of stress with the baby and everything. I pointed out that didn't give her the right to harass me every time I stepped outside. He stood there for a minute looking uncomfortable. Then he asked what it would take for me to remove the video. I told him an apology would be a start, along with a promise that she'd stay off my property and stop telling me how to live my life. He said he'd talk to her. The video stayed up. By the end of the week, it had been shared in several other neighborhood groups across town. People were using it as an example of nightmare neighbors. Someone even made it into a meme with captions about entitled people. I never got that apology. I run my catering business. Started it right after I lost my corporate job during the pandemic. What began as making food for neighbors to pay rent turned into something I actually love doing. Weddings are my specialty now, though they can be stressful with all the family drama that comes with them. This one wedding was supposed to be straightforward. The bride contacted me 2 months earlier with a specific request. She wanted me to make a special batch of small chops just for her bridesmaids. These weren't your regular party snacks. She wanted gourmet mini quiches, stuffed mushrooms, and these fancy chicken skewers with a special glaze recipe she found online. The bride explained that her bridesmaids had been incredible throughout the wedding planning process, helping with everything from dress shopping to dealing with difficult vendors. This was her way of showing appreciation. The bride was very clear about the arrangement. She paid extra for premium ingredients and emphasized multiple times that this batch was exclusively for her bridal party. She even specified that I should set up the tray in the bridal suite area, away from the main reception food. The regular wedding guests would have their own spread of food that I was also preparing, but these special small chops were off limits to everyone except the bride and her 6 bridesmaids. The wedding day arrived and everything was going smoothly. The ceremony was beautiful, photos were done, and I had finished preparing both the regular reception food and the special bridesmaids batch. The small chops looked perfect. I had spent extra time on the presentation, arranging them on an elegant silver tray with garnishes. The bride had seen them earlier and was thrilled with how they turned out. I was carrying the tray to the designated area near the bridal suite when I encountered the first sign of trouble. The venue was busy with wedding staff, photographers, and family members moving around, but I knew exactly where this tray needed to go. I had just set the tray down on the table in the bridal area when this woman appeared out of nowhere. She was probably in her 50s, wearing a bright purple dress that looked expensive but somehow managed to look cheap on her. She had this attitude about her that immediately put me on edge. You know the type, the way she carried herself screamed that she expected everyone to cater to her every whim. She looked at the tray with hungry eyes and announced that the food looked absolutely delicious. Without any introduction or permission, she told me she would take a few pieces. She reached toward the tray without even waiting for a response. I quickly stepped between her and the food. I explained that these were specifically for the bridesmaids only, and that the bride had made special arrangements for this batch. She looked at me like I had just told her the sky was green. She dismissed my explanation completely, telling me not to be ridiculous. She claimed to be the bride's aunt and insisted that the bride wouldn't mind if she had a few pieces. She gestured at the tray while saying there were plenty there, like my explanation was completely unreasonable. The entitlement in her voice was unmistakable. I tried to keep my voice calm and professional while explaining that I understood she was family, but I had strict instructions from the bride that these were only for her bridal party. I mentioned that there was plenty of food at the main reception for all the guests, In my line of work, you learn to deal with difficult people without losing your cool, but this woman was testing my patience. She called me absolutely ridiculous and insisted it was just food. She claimed the bride was her niece and guaranteed that the bride wouldn't care if she took a few pieces. Then she demanded that I move out of her way. She actually tried to push past me to get to the tray. I had to physically position myself to block her access while trying to remain respectful. I told her that I was just following the bride's specific instructions. I explained that these had been made exclusively for the bridesmaids as a special thank you gift from the bride, and that I couldn't let anyone else have them, regardless of their relationship to the bride. Her face turned red and her voice got louder. She said this was absolutely unacceptable and complained that I was just the hired help telling her, a member of the family, that she couldn't have food at her own niece's wedding. She demanded to know if I realized how much money they had spent on this event. The hired help comment really got under my skin, but I maintained my professionalism. I apologized that she felt that way, but explained that my job was to follow the bride's instructions exactly like she gave them to me. I told her she was welcome to speak with the bride directly if she wanted to discuss it. She announced that she would go talk to the bride right now, and we would see about this nonsense. She said I was going to look pretty stupid when the bride told her to give Karen whatever she wanted. She walked off toward the main reception area, muttering loudly about incompetent service providers and how things were different in her day. I stayed with the tray, making sure no one else tried to help themselves while she was gone. About 10 minutes later, I heard raised voices coming from the reception area. I couldn't make out everything, but I definitely heard the bride's voice getting firm with someone. Then it got quiet. The bride appeared a few minutes later looking slightly flustered but trying to maintain her composure on her wedding day. She apologized profusely for what had happened and explained that the woman was not actually her aunt. She revealed that Karen was actually her father's ex-girlfriend from years ago, who had somehow found out about the wedding and showed up uninvited. She told me that security was escorting Karen out at that very moment. My jaw dropped. This woman had been lying the entire time about being family. The bride thanked me for protecting the bridesmaids' food and confirmed that I had done exactly what she asked me to do. She said the girls were going to love the food when they were ready to eat. I told her I was just glad I could help and hoped the rest of her day would go smoothly. She assured me it would go smoothly now that Karen was gone. She also mentioned that Karen had tried to tell her that I was rude and refusing to serve family members. The bride said she told Karen that first of all, she wasn't family, and second, she had no business being in the bridal area anyway. That's when Karen finally admitted she wasn't really supposed to be there. The bridesmaids got their special treat, the bride was happy, and Karen got exactly what she deserved, absolutely nothing except a quick trip to the parking lot. The rest of the wedding went perfectly, and I never saw that purple dress again. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.